we are going to ignore the acne because all it wants is our attention, although bringing it up is kind of counterintuitive, but whatever. What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and welcome back to my own personal science experiment. This is a D&D hybrids challenge, sort of. And at that, let's welcome back my beautiful character roller. This is something that I've actually made. I brought it up in the first video. You can take a look at that if you want to. I'll have it linked in the description because it's on itch.io for free. You can just get it whenever, regardless. But it's pretty small and simple anyway. The idea here being that in this, you can roll a random character or you can roll a hybrid between two species. This one is my preference. If you have watched a few of my other videos, you know I've gone on a few diatribes about how humans in, fantasy circumstances are the horny race. We go with anything, and I don't think that that's necessarily an untruth. However, I like the non-human humanoids or just the non-human species in general, and I like playing around with them, and I like making hybrids for them because all the hybrids are human-based, and that gets a little boring after a while. Usually they just look like a guy with blue skin, like okay, I guess, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's a little overdone. So I figured that we would take some time to appreciate the non-human hybrids, given we don't roll a human hybrid in this, because you absolutely can if you roll a hybrid between two species, because human is available. And if that's the case, maybe we'll let it happen this time. It'll be anything goes. But at that, let's just get right into it and roll our first selection. As you can see, we have height, class, species, gender. I'd actually like to try and do this a little bit better at some point, probably obviously keeping this original stage because it's my baby. But going in and fluffing it up a little bit and trying to give it more stuff. That might be my my New Year project. My first, game-related project of the year. I am going on such a tangent. I am so sorry. Let's just get right into it. 5 minutes have passed. First hybrid. 6 foot tall. Cleric. A Minotaur and a Goblin. Interesting. So both kind of like creatures that one might associate with like a dungeon or labyrinthian thing almost, right? Non-binary. We rarely get binary characters in these selections, I swear. They're there. They're just 50-50 because there's non-binary, agender, male and female. And the skin tone actually quite matches the idea of a goblin, in fact. And I think we've gotten a goblin centaur before. So this is kind of a variant of that almost. But okay, I will grab you. 6 foot tall again. Again, always incredibly tall or incredibly short characters as well. 6 feet is not that bad because it ranges from 3 to 10. Alright. And boop. 8 foot tall, there we go. Another paladin? We just got a paladin, didn't we? No, it's a cleric. Oh. Very similar at the very least. I know that they're different to some degree, but a cleric is more like I'll beat you up, right? I kind of always forget which is which. I think paladin is caster and cleric is like holy warrior. Okay. So then it would make sense why these two might get along, because that is another aspect that we go for here, is we kind of try and make a group. I have no clue about the skin tone. It might work for turtle folk. Alright, and our final selection, a boop, 10 foot tall, a sorcerer, a centaur raccoon folk, hello Nori, non-binary, what was the other one? We got non-binary gender, non-binary, no binary genders. Again. Okay. I don't know why I find that funny. It just is. I don't know if I rarely keep with the height unless I find it funny. Alright, so we've got our characters here copied into Clip, so it's easier for me to draw them later. And as a little refresher, 8 foot tall paladin turtle folk and dog folk. Turtle dog. Isn't that a thing? Isn't that like a phrase? I think that's a phrase. Agender, kind of like seafoam green skin. Definitely kind of makes sense for that, right? I think this was actually our first selection. 6 foot tall cleric, Minotaur and Goblin, non-binary. That kind of goblin-y green skin tone. 10 foot tall sorcerer, centaur and raccoon folk, non-binary again. And a kind of dark brown skin tone. It actually makes sense considering given, like, raccoons have kind of, like, the little, like, grabby hands, and they're usually dark colored. So, I mean, overall, this definitely seems, for one, like a zoo of characters. Okay, well, interesting. A very, also a very cohesive color scheme between the 3 of them, so that's interesting as well. But at that, I will pop you guys over to Speedpan voiceover, where I have already figured out what to do with these 3, because I need to think about it a little bit. So, see you there. First up, we have the Goblin Minotaur Hybrid Cleric. I will say I struggled for most of these, but this was probably the one that took the longest to figure out. Trying to find something between a cow face and a humanoid face is, it's a challenge. Not to mention, I didn't know what to do with this character. The theme didn't exactly jump out at me. I was kind of scrolling through the cleric page to get some idea of what I wanted. I figured it would make some sense for a character with this origin to be a mischief cleric. Then I thought it would be fun to have a mischief cleric that, as a part of their god's nature, has unpredictable powers. So the concept sort of formed that I would have a former jester with a magic hammer that changes size or ability almost at the will of their god. I decided to make a reference and call this character Mimus, the titular character of a book by Lily Thal. I hope I'm saying that right. I read it once in high school, totally by chance, and I loved it. There was this portion of our English credit that was getting a certain number of points per quarter for completing these, like, book quizzes, and I picked it up at random. The main concept is that a prince gets kidnapped by a rival kingdom and is forced to be a fool under the guidance of the king's jester, Mimus. Mimus in the book wears donkey ears, but I thought the outfit I landed on here kind of resembled his, at least with the whole eared cowl situation. It's a good book! Tangent aside, let's get into a little bit of backstory. Mimus came about when a goblin man was sent into a dungeon containing a small herd of minotaurs as punishment, assuming they would rip him to shreds. However, being a cave-dwelling type himself, the goblin knew how to communicate with the creatures. He wooed the lead female, and eventually Mimus was born. When the next poor soul was sent to the castle's dungeon, the guards found a very much alive goblin and the baby hybrid. The king ordered the goblin and his mate to be killed along with their child, but the queen found the baby humorously ugly and asked if they could be given to the fools to entertain guests. It would be a true novelty, surely. Mimus grew into their adulthood, juggling wooden hammers and tripping over themselves, utterly miserable. One night they had a strange dream. An entity with a twisted face like that of a comedy mask, laughing at their plight. Oh, you will make the perfect piece for my game. Mimus awoke to alarm, finding the castle under siege. They felt compelled to take one of the wooden mallets from their prop box, and with a surge of magic, it changed. Between this and the ruckus, Mimus thought they could escape. Mimus struggled through the castle, as the hammer would always grow or shrink or change texture each time they used it, but eventually they made it out by some miracle. To this day, Mimus doesn't quite understand their patron, but still accepts their help. Occasionally, they seem to be able to sway their spells by starting each with the phrase, "Wouldn't it be funny?" Next up, the Turtle Dogfolk Hybrid Paladin, and here I thought having a canid would mean my struggles were over, but no. There were too many directions I felt like I could have taken this, but simultaneously none that I liked. Eventually, for the face, I decided to land on something that heavily resembled Neverending Story's Falcor, that big puffy luck dragon, because he's sort of a hybrid between a reptile and a dog, right? That led me to sort of slimming down the turtle concept, but it was okay because that meant I had a kind of motivation for this character being a holy knight. I decided to name them Bastion, Also kind of a nod to Neverending Story too, but the main character Bastion's full name is probably Sebastian, spelled with an A. Just Bastion with an O means like a secure place, like a stronghold, which makes sense because turtles usually have that with them at all times via their shell. Well, except for Bastion, ironically. Bastion was the result of a pretty typical, yet still quite atypical, love story between a turtle woman and a dog woman. The two wouldn't be able to have a child naturally, regardless of their sexes, so they used magic to create an egg with their one beloved child, little Bastion. Bastion was born with a soft belly and a small shell, concerning for turtle folk. Bastion faced a lot of social turmoil for this in the swamps where their mothers lived, given most of the populace were turtles. Bastion eventually decided to set out to learn everything that he could about weaponry and defense, along with a single vow to protect their family. This, combined with Bastion's magic origins, set Bastion on the path to become a paladin of the Ancient Order, one their turtle mother knew well, being a shaman herself. Bastion is, however, quite sheltered, no pun intended. On their first day on the road, they were one of many to mistake Mimas for an orc, but also the first to listen to them in their plight. Both searching for answers, the two of them set off together. Bastion does seem to be finding that the best defense can be a good offense in their case. And finally, we have the Centaur Raccoon Folk Sorcerer. This was definitely the fastest of the three for me, because I am more than used to drawing raccoons, and I have a weird fascination with centaurs. They intrigue me. The main challenge was really just drawing a raccoon and not having it just be my persona Nori with a palette swap. I think I succeeded pretty well there. I did this the last time I made a centaur character with Finn, where if I make a centaur, I kind of want their horse, quote-unquote, half to almost match aesthetically. So here I kept with a more woodland vibe and made this character a deer on the tar part. I imagine all three of these characters as young adults, but I just had to add the fawn spot freckles, okay? I kind of wanted something simple and natural for the name, because this character gives big, like, Feywild vibes, so I just called them Sky for their sky blue eyes, and partially for their star-like spots on his face and body, but I don't think Sky's parents would assume they wouldn't grow out of them. Sky was born in a highly magic area close to a veil separating the Fey world from their own. His city was a whole host of animal centaurs living somewhere between wild and self-domesticated. Sky was named for their sky blue eyes, a rarity among the animal folk, and a huge indicator of natural magic. Sure enough, Sky had a knack for the untamed nature magic that surrounded their home. His studies were more of a hobby initially because the sleepy town had only known peace, which made a perfect storm for when it was caught between a land conflict between realms. Many were killed or fled, and Sky was among them. Their powers saved some, along with Sky themselves, but it still wasn't quite enough, not to mention it drew attention from the warring factions, each keen on obtaining extra magic on their side. Sky ran in a panic state fueled by wild magic, and when he came to, had no idea where he was. Certainly no one around looked like Sky. Now Sky is on a mission to, of course, find a way back home, to a place no one seems to know of, and learn more about magic to help their people. They were quick to pick up curious magic coming from one place, and there found Mimas and Bastion, a fellow animal person and a centaur cousin. Sky is infinitely curious about Mimas' magic and Bastion's connection to nature. Hopefully their gift leads this strange party where they need to go. And those are all this week's hybrids. I hope you like this. I feel like as much as I enjoyed these characters individually, I made them kind of stylistically different somehow, and obviously the challenge of kind of coming up with at least the first two hybrids was crazy. I kind of love the group shot despite that though, because it kind of looks like Mimas' careening hammer is about to land on Sky, and that's why they're running. Be sure to give this video a like if you did like it, and subscribe to catch more art challenges I do like this in the future. Lots of random generators, critters, nerdy stuff. It's a fun time. I upload at least once a week on Speed Paint Saturday. At that, though, I'll leave this here, and I'll see y'all next time.